Alright guys, I am back. It is Sunday and it's time for a quick Curse Realm and Nightmare Corridor walkthrough of my teams, and then also looking at some different guides for the two game modes. I apologize for my absence the past 2 weeks. Well, there was a Abyssal Expedition going on, so that was very time consuming. And also I just started my semester. So yeah, there's enough to do. But enough yapping, and let's start looking at the teams. So let's look at my time so you can see the collections more clearly. For the Nightmare Corridor this week, I'll be honest. After if you guys didn't know, Region 8 just released, which made Region 7 like a lot easier, right? Because half of the players moved out, and thus ranking highly in the Nightmare Corridor is now a lot less taxing, or a lot less. It requires a lot less from me. Also, we are not doing this in this screen. But yeah, it requires a lot less to rank inside Region 7 now, so therefore my teams aren't as optimized as they usually are for the Nightmare Corridor, because the competition is way lower. And I'm not hitting top 100 anyhow. So yeah, I'm just chilling with my current teams. But yeah, I guess we can look in here. So for the first team here, I'm using the Baden team. Now, there is an argument to move the regular Baden team into this team, but that requires specific teams for this last round, specific teams that I could not make, and thus I can probably conclude that you guys can't make them make them either. So for the first time round, it's just a Baden round, right? What is this horrific hero screen? What did they do, by the way? They did something. Let's just take it in here, actually. Let's just do this instead. Right, so for the first team, it's the Baden team. Here are the collections. Now, things of note for the collections, not really anything. Not really anything of note, honestly. No levels or such for the teams. For the next team here, now this is a team where you can do a lot of things, right? It's the Athalia round. Now, I switched into the Orthos variant for the first time this week. Usually, if you guys have watched my previous videos, well, of course, I haven't been doing them recently, but usually what I do is I use this setup. Alternatively, you can also use a Chimera in here, or you can also use Mortis instead of the Dancers, right? So this was like my old setup, and if you're using the setup, you want to use the Winged Lion, right? So this is like my old setup. Then I improved it to this setup. Again, Chimera can go in over this guy, but for me, Daemon is better. One thing to note is that Daemon needs not this collection, but he needs this type of collection, the Spellbound collection, right? So Daemon needs to have this one. But then this week I upgraded, right? Because I was finally able to make one of the Soufflé team work, which required me to use Gavious and Orthos. And for this team to work, you need to make sure that, well, I suppose I re-geared him. But yeah, usually you need to make sure that Orthos has lowest HP, but actually it's not a Liberta round, so that shouldn't matter that much. What you just need to make sure of is that Athalia has the highest attack, so that or the highest combat rating, so that Ivan jumps on her and not on Palmer, which shouldn't be an issue for most people. Here are the collections, and also what is this guy doing here? This is meant to be Orthos. Yeah, okay, yeah, I did remove his gear. I'm not tripping, right? So yeah, and yeah, here's the collections, and nothing really of note. Next team. So here's another team where there's infinite variations. I'll get into the like a more comprehensive guide. But for me, this is the team variation that worked the best. But there are many things you can do in here. For example, you can replace this hero and you can toss in her. There's also like you can swap around with the way that the teams are set up. You can also use not Rowan, Rosaline in here, and also for the pet you can use the Winged Lion and this pet, pretty interchangeable. And another thing you can do is you can even swap this team into the fourth round, and then use the team 4 in the third round. For some people that's better. For me, it's not better by a significant margin. But yeah, this was not my team. This was my team. One thing you have to make sure of in this team is that Liberta. You need to make sure that Liberta links Vika. The way I do that is I make sure she has the lowest HP. So I remove these two pieces of gear, and I make sure her collection does not have HP on it. Watch it have HP on it, then I'm a complete liar. I guess it has a little bit of HP, but for the heroes that is contesting her, like this hero, I made sure that Lawson had a high HP collection, and for her as well, a high HP collection, and the rest of the heroes aren't really contesting her as the lowest HP hero. Next team, this is the Leica team, things you can do in here. You can swap Leica in the back and in the front line. Also, you can run You can run, where is she? Lucilla in this team as well. You can do her over Damia. For me, I'm using Lucilla in here, and I'm using Damia in here. But yeah, lots of things you can do in here. The pet's pretty stable. For the Leica round, I had a lot of failures, right? I toss it down to my collections being quite poor. I mean, this Leica collection is pretty good, but as you can see here, I'm yet to get a +2 Leica collection, which I really want, or a Athalia collection, I suppose, for Leica. But yeah, that would probably help this team out a lot. One thing I did do, though, for my hits is I maxed out my Ranger tree, and that helped out this team tremendously. So if you have the opportunity to reset your trees, max out the Ranger tree for this team. And also for Nightmare Corridor attacks, you can leave tank tree at very low investment and just max out the other trees. Next up, this is the Belinda team. Now for the this is the Belinda team. I'll show you guys the variations later on. But for the collections here, the only thing that really mattered for me was actually I tossed a lot of preference or pref. I don't actually know, PRF, whatever it stands for. I tossed a lot of PRF onto Rosaline, and that helped the team out a lot, but otherwise this was quite stable. And last but not least, this is also a stable bot, pretty bad team, admittedly. It's doing like a stable 37 seconds, but yeah, it's just what it is, right? Looking at my leaderboard time, as you can see, it's not a super good time, but here you can see the different timings. And I suppose I could show you collections because I just did my Curse Realm attacks, so my collections could be messed up from my actual hits. And also significantly, as you can see here, I had to remove Palmer's collection because he was stealing Ivan's buff on Athalia. And as you can see here, I maxed every single tree except for the tank tree. And I guess I couldn't even max the support tree, but right, you get the idea. Yeah, so those were the hits. Let us real quick head over to the browser and I'll show you guys some different Nightmare Corridor guides. So this first guide here, I'll link them in the description, is from a guildmate of mine, ManualAlcayaga. I might have butchered that name. If so, I apologize. But yeah, he basically looks through the leaderboards, sifts. That's a rough word for my accent. Sifts through the leaderboard to find different variations. And as you can see here, he has pretty similar to my teams, right? There are a bit of variations, but my teams are somewhere in here as well. But yeah, as you can see for the first round, not much variation. It's just a Baden team for most people. For some people, you can use the regular Baden team, but that requires insane teams in this last one, which isn't feasible for most accounts, as I said earlier. For the second team, as you can see here, the Athalia team. So the one that I ended up using is this top formation here. Of course, the pet is interchangeable, and as you can see, if you can't do the Orthros formation, you end up down here, right? And as you can see, he's using Hotskin over what I would use either Dancers or Mortars, but obviously Hotskin is also an option. And here are some different variations, right, that you can test out yourselves. For this team here, so these are like the times, right? But for me personally, I was not able to replicate, well, pretty much any of these times. I wasn't able to get such good times. I don't know what the cause is. I couldn't be asked, like, because my region got easier, I couldn't be asked to actually figure out what is the requirement for hitting these times. Damn, I'm stuttering a lot. My bad. But yeah, as you can see, there's a Rosaline variant. For most people, you're using Rosaline in this team, so you ignore that variant, and then you end up at here, but using Gavious in this team, so you don't want Gavious or Rosaline, and then you end up here, which is the variant that I'm using. But obviously, if you could free up Rosaline from this, or Liberta from... Not Liberta, sorry. God. If you could free up Gavious, you could use him in here, and if you could free up Rosaline, you could use her in here as well. But yeah. And also, as you can see here, you can swap this team with the next team, right? So you can swap region or round 3 and round 4, and that has some merit for me. I mean, you should test it out, but for me, it wasn't better, right? This is the Leica team, right? I think I'm using not this exact setup because I don't believe I'm using Tamras or Jerome. I'm using the Rimuru setup, so I believe I'm using this setup, except I'm not using Liberta, so I'm using this setup, right? But as you can see, there are some variations. There's even a Saphira variant, and I believe in this variant you probably want to SP Saphira. That's usually the way it goes whenever she's in a team. But yeah, you're gonna have to test that out yourself because I haven't. Next up here, this is the Belinda team. Now, notably, Scarlet can do pretty much just as well as Belinda in this team. So if you have Scarlet built out, and of course if you don't have Belinda built out, try Scarlet a few rounds and see if it's any good. For me, it's fairly similar. Actually, Scarlet sometimes can hit faster than Belinda, but it's way less consistent. As for the variations, as you can see here, Rosaline is in pretty much every single Belinda variation, right? Which is why these Rosaline teams up here aren't really feasible. Another thing is Estrilda is usually used in the Baden round up here. So you probably want to end up settling on something like this for the team, right? And obviously the pet is the Panda, and if your Panda isn't 18, you can use the Blade Ridge and then try slotting in the Winged Lion in this team. Right. And last but not least, as you can see, no variation in this team. I mean, the only thing you can swap is the third position, but for most people and for me actually, Gavious is the best. But yeah, obviously, Gavious is needed elsewhere, so thus Navy is both cheaper and very similar in time. So this is like a guide I haven't shown before. We also have the Chinese guide, right, from the Curse Realm Discord. The crowdsourcing Discord, excuse me. But yeah, this guide, I mean, it doesn't list as many variants, and it just lists like the overall team, right? So as you can see, the teams are all here from this guide, but the crucial difference is just the lack of variations, right? Because this pretty much just lists the Bastion slot team. As you can see, here's the dragon variant, right? But the Thane variant, but yeah, for most people, Dragon and Thane variants aren't really feasible. And it lists a bunch of variants here, and then last but not least, it lists. I mean, I haven't even seen this variant in the last team. I don't look at whale formations, but I suppose this is something that you could do. But yeah, for most people, this is much better, much more to try. But if you want to look at the best in slot formation and the whale formations, you can do this. And here are the translation notes for this guide. All right, I'm running out of voice, so let's just speed run the Cursed Realm real quick. Now for the Cursed Realm this week, again, this week I didn't really put much effort into neither the Nightmare Corridor or the Cursed Realm, but I suppose the report screen is much better here. So for the first team here, I'm using Baden. Now, Baden. My Baden has hit higher previously when I had my tree maxed, obviously, but I had to level out my trees. So I ended up using a weaker Baden, or the same Baden team, but it just hit weaker. But it's a bit of RNG, right? It can hit high, it can hit low. Disclaimer for my Curse Realm team, I don't have Awakened Antandra or Baden, so I choose to merc Baden because I can't find a Baden-less round 1 variant that's any good. However, there are in non-Antandra variants that you can use instead of her, which I'll show you, the one that I settled on. So for this team here, obviously SP on Belinda. Things to note, I guess Palmer wants Magic Pierce. I believe mine has 2 Magic Pierce. Yeah, so double Magic Pierce on Palmer. Linda obviously just combat stats. Damia does enjoy the +2 hero wings for survivability, and obviously +1 spell bondage for Chimera is pretty good because it's a bit of a damage amp, and then for Lava Tune, pretty much just anything will work, right? Next up, here's the Rem team, right? Obviously I'm using SP on what is she called? Soulless, yeah, Awakened Soulless, not Sophia this round. You can play around with the formation, like the way you set up your heroes. For me, this turned out to be the best. Also, as for the collections, +2 on Jerome helped me, and +1 on Jerome's collection helped me, and +1 on Rem's collection also helped me. And admittedly, this is a bit of an RNG round. It hits like anywhere between 8 and 13 billion. As you can see here, I was lucky to get a 13 billion hit on one of my stronger hits. I should also mention, I mentioned Baden was an RNG round, and not Chimera, but Belinda's also a bit of an RNG round. However, it's actually fairly stable for me at my current setup. Next team here. So this is where you would use Awakened Antandra, I believe. But for me, obviously, no Awakened Antandra. Or I could merc one, but then I can't use Baden, and I need to use Baden. So we just end up using a steady old Seal team. Now this Seal team, this Seal variant is actually equal to a cheaper Seal variant. And that in that Seal variant, you use Trashia and Ivan instead of these 2 heroes. I know Melusina is not a hero most people have built, and I don't even know why I have her built to this investment, because she has literally no use. Well, I do suppose she has some use, but yeah, if you don't have her, just use Ivan and Trashia, and it's just as good. As for the collections, I mean, it's pretty much just a shit show, right? None of these are any good. And obviously Seal is the main carry doing pretty much all the damage. Next up, yeah, here's the here's my Lucius round, who is doing not so well. I tried to fix this. I kind of gave up. Like, this team can hit like 13 billion, 14 billion, but I know it's supposed to hit higher, but I can't be bothered to figure out what's wrong with my collections to fix it. Also, another thing, you can use Tamras over Queen, and I thought I thought that might be better, but Queen just ended up way more stable for me than Tamras. And in the Tamras rounds, excuse me, in the Tamras attempts, the team just flopped way too often for me to even bother with it. But yeah, obviously, I don't know, like, if you have better collections, maybe it's better for you, but this is just what I ended up with. Now here, for this team, you do have to do a bit of min-maxing for this team to work. Now, so let's just so the things you have to do. Sorry, I'm really flustered. I guess it's been a while since I spoke English or something. I'm not sure. But yeah, ideally, Liberta links Rosaline, meaning Rosa has to have the lowest HP, and Rosaline ideally follows Liberta, right? That's the ideal thing. For me, this was way better, where I had Rosaline follow Athalia, and I believe Liberta is linking himself. Here are the collections, and also for the pet, I believe I used I think the panda before I popped the resonance for the new beast. Let's go back in time real quick. Well, that's a bit too far back in time. Wait, where is it? There. Panda, but only 11 billion damage with the panda, right? And then I popped the new beast, and yeah, I fixed my team. It's similar in damage, right? And I had to fix my team here, right? So yeah, those are my teams. Let's go look at the guide, because I don't know what's going on in my brain. I guess it's Sunday and I'm kind of cooked. So for the Cursed Realm, here's the translation note, but here's the guide, which is actually what you want, right? So for the first team, right, this is the exact formation I'm running. You want to stack Insight in this formation on the relevant heroes like Baden and Odin, right? But yeah, not much variation, and this is also the reason why I am running Baden and not trying anything else out, and then murking Antandra. So next team here, the Belinda team. Not much to note. I agree with this team. I guess you could play a bit around with the backline positioning, but yeah, Magic Pierce on Palmer, and just a good attack collection on Belinda, and away you go. Next up, yeah, I think we can safely just skip this first team, because no man alive feasibly has this team. So we end up here. For me, Rimuru was not better than Vithiel. Rimuru was doing like 9 to 10, maybe sometimes 11 if lucky, whereas Vithiel was hitting the 13 billions, and even though it was like slightly more variance, it was definitely better for me. But I guess you should test out both for yourself. Next up, obviously, if you have Antandra or Baden, you merc the one that you don't have, and you make this team or this team, right? I believe the Seal Antandra team is a little cheaper to make work, but don't quote me on that, because I haven't tested it for obvious reasons, because I don't have Antandra. And what do you do if you don't have Antandra? You end up down here. This is the exact formation that I'm using, and as I mentioned earlier, you can swap these two frontline heroes for these two frontline heroes, which are much cheaper, right? These are 4-faction heroes, while these are Draconic and dimensional heroes, and old dimensional heroes at that. Next up, the Lucius team. Now, for the best in slot formation, or for the one that this guy recommends or tells you to try out, you're using Leica in the backline. But for most people, and for me, and probably most of you guys, Lady Simona is way better than Leica, because the idea of Leica is she jumps in, does a lot of damage, and grabs the debuff. But that doesn't happen unless you have like a super Leica. So yeah, that pretty much just doesn't happen. And again, if you don't have Lucius, you can use Solus in this team, which I believe is what I used last time this round rolled around, because I didn't have Lucius at that point. And I used this team, which is like I think it's like a 10 billion damage team, whereas this is like, well, in theory it's like 17 plus, but for me it's 13, 14, kind of iffy. Next up, as you can see here, we have the expensive variation and we have the cheap variation. The cheap variation, obviously for most people, it's very easy to make, but it also does a significant amount of damage. Well, significantly less damage than this team, I should say. Now here we actually do want to dive into the translation node, so that I can fix what this is the nightmare corridor. Here we are. For the round 6, right? So what I was trying to explain very poorly for the team for the round 6 is that for the first team, or for the not the first team, but for this variation of the team, for Christ's sake, God, I need to take a speaking class or something. But yeah, for that version of the team, you need to have Rosaline as the lowest HP, so she receives Liberta's orb and then follow Liberta, right? As I mentioned, this didn't work for me. I had Rosaline follow Athalia, and then Liberta just linked himself. Again, Gavish should have the highest attack. Good luck with that. And yeah, I mean, that's for the very top end of damage. For me, 16 billion damage for this team is probably fine. All right, that was pretty scuffed, but I guess I'm just getting back into the hang of things. Also, my teams this week, they aren't the best. Like, I didn't really have the time or effort to min-max them super hard, but I believe I'll be back stronger than ever for next week. But yeah, I guess I did show you my teams. And also, actually, I'm out of points. I'll see you guys next Sunday. Dear God.